Abraham Lincoln was perhaps the most popular president in U.S. history. However, he never set foot in the state of Tennessee. So it may come as a surprise to you that one of the largest collections of Lincoln history resides up in Harrogate in the eastern part of our state. Gretchen Bates takes us to explore a museum you probably never heard of and a university campus you've never heard of either.
It might surprise you to learn that one of our country's largest and most diverse Lincoln collections is located on the campus of Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee.
We are one of the best kept secrets in Tennessee, and it's a shame.
Thomas Mackey is the museum director for the Abraham Lincoln Library and Museum.
The museum has been part of Lincoln Memorial University really from the beginning years in 1897. General Oliver Otis Howard, who was one of the founding trustees of the university, had insisted that a Lincoln collection be established as part of the university's overall education and research programs.
Welcome to the Abraham Lincoln Library Museum. And these are the things you'd carry around if you were a soldier in the Civil War.
There are three major Lincoln galleries dealing with his life. His young life prior to the Civil War itself, and then we call the Legacy Gallery, which looks at the assassination issues, but also how Lincoln's memory is used, particularly in art. So the early years, we look at his family, his background, and then what made him into a politician. The last gallery, which deals very heavily with his memories and what that memory means to Americans afterwards.
What you're looking at is a bit of technology from the 19th century. This is a rifled cannon 3-inch. Now, something like this was almost like threading a needle. It was that accurate.
All of the pieces on display at the museum relay memories from America's past. Much of the collection consists of personal items that belong to Lincoln and his family.
The first one really I liked was the corner cupboard made by Lincoln's father, Thomas. By the dating of the cupboard, the provenance behind the object, it looks to be the one at least when he was living in Knob Creek, Kentucky. So this cupboard would have had his hands on it. The Lincoln china, or porcelain set from England. It's made by the royal producers for china in England for Queen Victoria. It tells me that in 1858, before most people knew, Lincoln was running for president.
Perhaps the most dramatic piece of the Lincoln collection is the walking cane that Lincoln carried with him on that fateful night. The cane is now known as the assassination cane.
It is a ebony silver cane with Lincoln's engraving on it. It was carried the night he went to Ford's Theater. When the night he was shot, the cane would have fallen behind the chair. It was picked up by an actor that night, saved as a family keepsake and heirloom. After a while, being out of work, an actor sold it for $40 to a grocer, and then that grocer's family donated it to LMU back in 1928. To have objects that not only they touch and use, but that have a point in history. For an interpreter, it makes a very strong image that this item saw one of those historic moments that changed the way we are as Americans.
Also unique to the collection are dioramas built between 1938 and 39.
There are 5 dioramas in the collection. They're originally from the Chicago Historical Society. Colonel Sanders, our trustee at the time here at LMU, and some of our administrators had connections in Chicago and were able to secure 5 of these original, really impressive dioramas.
Now let me ask you a question. How many of you think women fought in the Civil War in uniform? Raise your hands. Well, actually, 400 that we know of.
There is a lot more to the museum than meets the eye. It also houses a vast collection of historical documents and rare books.
Most museums have a front room and a back room. The galleries, the gift shop, the public areas are called the front room. Most people just see those. The back room, since we're actually a university museum and archives and research library, we have a very large back room. In fact, most of our space is where we house books.
The museum and library attracts a variety of visitors, from historians to students and teachers, tourists, and the occasional dignitary.
Really?
Honest. Abe?
In and around a small little Pennsylvania town called Gettysburg was fought one of the bloodiest battles ever to take place on the American continent.
Meet Abraham Lincoln impersonator Dennis Boggs.
I am a storyteller, period. I don't think I'm a historian. I'm certainly not a scholar, although I've been reading Lincoln and his time for about 22 years. But yeah, I'm just a storyteller, but I try to make sure that I use Lincoln's words. If I do that, there's not any room for argument. But it can never forget what they did here. I've fell into this museum, you know, just like a lot of people, by accident. I was on my way back from Johnson City, and I told my wife, I said, we need to go check this Abraham Lincoln Museum out. And so I've been coming here for quite a few years now.
These days, when Dennis visits the museum, he comes in character. The museum hosts a variety of events throughout the year, from lectures in the spring to short shows and music in the summer.
In the fall, we do Lincoln at Gettysburg, and we do a Christmas with Lincolns, which is often a music show. And so those are the big ones we have here.
And the big star at many of the shows is none other than, you guessed it, Abe Lincoln.
87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Tennessee has about the 4th or 5th largest collection of Lincoln artifacts anywhere in the country, and it's right here in our own home state of Tennessee. So I encourage people, come to LMU and then spend time here at this museum, not only looking at the artifacts, but by asking to go into the archives department and see the tremendous treasure of written materials that this university has on hand. It's a great place to spend the day, and get to know a pretty special man. And that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.